Well, hello, and welcome to the very special episode of episode 100 of the
Ooh.
1v1 podcast. And I have a very special guest. He is the man who inspired myself and countless others to make YouTube channels of a game that quite literally does not exist. He is our Sandalord and Savior, our creative director of Intrepid Studios, Stephen Sharif. What is going on, my dude?
I am excited to be here. I can't believe 100 episodes. Holy shit.
Well, I cheated a little bit, but they don't have to know that. But yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe that we're at this point. I can't believe that I even have you on to talk Ashes of Creation, a little bit about yourself and everything like that. And just to start it off, like how's everything been going as far as like testing and everything like that?
It has been a little bit of a mad dash here over the course of the last few months. We have officially now invited all of the Alpha 1 testers, so they are currently in the pre-A2 testing.
Let's go.
Um, and we are finding as many bugs and crashes and issues as we can. I think that the majority of the testers will tell you that, test after test, they're seeing improvement and improvement, which is good. We are very much in a test and react phase with the studio as a whole, as a team, right? It's kind of
Right.
like daily triage, hot fix, approaches that we are doing. We decided last weekend to extend the testing 24/7. So we've been up 24/7 over the course of the
Oh, that's
last
awesome.
7 days or so, um, or 8 days, which, was a little bit of an adjustment for the team. Right now, we are working 7 days, and we are, trying to get everything in order, trying to get everything in a position where, obviously stability is the utmost importance. And then after that is performance for us. And then, we have a host of different gameplay bugs that exist within the game that, of course, we're going to be addressing, but we're focused on stability and performance right now.
That's awesome. I mean, the thing, Stephen, like when I go and talk to people in Discords, when I talk about Ashes of Creation, especially going off of feedback and just off of, we always say this is going to be a testing and not a game, right? We've been preaching that, we've been
Right.
saying that, content creators, yourself, Margaret. But there's a lot of people that I've talked to that have never really tested an MMO at an alpha state. There's a
Right.
lot of lack of knowledge of like, well, what do I do if I'm not playing a game? Then I'm testing, and what am I doing? Stuff repeated. So really, like, I guess the first question I truly have is like, what kind of feedback are you guys looking for from Alpha 2 from a player perspective? And are you going to be giving new testers like direction in
Yeah.
what you guys want feedback on specifically for systems?
Yeah, I think what you just talked about, which was, you have interacted with a lot of people who haven't gone through this process before. I think that is a byproduct of the open development approach that we're taking, right? Like, yes, there are games out there that have had transparent development processes. We're seeing that more and more, right, over the course of these last several years. But I'm not sure that there are a lot that are that are doing it to the degree we are, but also to the exposure that we are as well. Like, people are aware of Ashes of Creation who wouldn't traditionally be aware of games that are going through this phase of development, right?
Right.
And as a result of that, you're going to get a lot of individuals who are only interested in playing a game, and they can't bifurcate what is their desire to play the game versus the stage we are in, which is still very much testing and building the game.
Right.
Um, and so, when we talk about like direction that we give our testers, every day we are interacting with our test group right now, right? We have thousands and thousands of Alpha 1 testers that are a part of the testing Discord, the NDA Discord, who are receiving, multiple updates daily from the community team, from the development team. They're working with the development team in voice channels as they're playing. We're actively
That's really
collecting
good.
logs from them. We're actively doing focus groups with them. We're engaged with the audience in an effort to help guide both our prioritization of bugs that we need to fix based on impact,
Right.
our iteration and how we address issues that players are experiencing with certain gameplay systems. Balance wise, right? We're now doing kind of broad stroke balance approaches to hone in on what we want to iterate on from a combat perspective, from an ability damage perspective, from an economy perspective. All of these things are being done in league with the testers that we have participating.
Right.
And it is important that when we talk about what feedback represents, that a lot of times players enjoy getting into the solutions realm of how do I solve a problem.
Absolutely.
That's and that's not necessarily where we want a lot of players to go to. Where we want players to focus on is helping to describe the problem, helping make that problem statement,
Right.
because there's a lot of connectivity between all of these systems within the game that we can't expect the players to be aware of
Right.
uniformly, right?
Right.
And so as a result of that, the more detail that players give in why they disliked an interaction or why they liked an interaction, or how that gameplay was not fun for them or whatever, right? Describing the problem statement in a very detailed fashion gives us the information we need to then solution form. And we
Right.
solution form with the community right now. Like,
Right.
with our players, we're discussing, our approach, what we're going to do as part of our patch notes process as well. Like, we made these changes because of this. We made these changes, because of your feedback.
Well, you guys
So
did. Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, you're good.
Well, I was gonna say y'all did an excellent job. Like that was why I actually became a content creator because we know the 2020 interview with you and Asmin was a huge pivotal moment of the whole Lazy Peon video. And then that whole time I was watching all the way until the release of Alpha 1 and y'all's feedback and how y'all handled the discourse of interaction with the community is what really sold me because companies don't do that, man. They don't offer direction. They don't,
Right.
if you're trying to test something and they're like, well, just play the game and just leave whatever feedback you want. And that kind of leads into the next question is, I've talked to so many people that are very adamant, Stephen, about certain systems and they want them changed in the way they deem is the
Right.
correct way. And so when it comes to certain systems in Ashes of Creation, which systems will never change due to feedback? Because I think there's a lot of people that are going to try to change systems that are fundamentally just not going to.
Yeah, I think when I think about what the identity is of Ashes, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's core systems that contribute to that identity, such
Right.
as PvX, right? Such
Exactly.
as a dynamic world, right? And those big terms, those big keywords, they have a lot of supporting systems underneath them, which
Right.
could see potential balance changes. They could see potential interaction changes, slight, but the
Right.
intent of what that those systems provide, which is this concept of always being aware of your other players and their disposition towards you, right? Of
Mhm.
managing your reputation, of building alliances and, maintaining enemies. Like that's the PvX realm. And
Right.
what systems support that? Our flagging system, our war systems, our reputation and citizenship systems, like all of these pseudo faction systems exist, right? And so it's kind of difficult to give an answer that's really broad stroke here about what systems will we never change. I think it's what intents will we never change, right? Because
Correct. Like the philosophy, because I think there's a lot of people that are trying to change the philosophy of this game. Like people are asking
correct.
for PvE
That's right.
servers when that's
That's
something that
right.
is never going to happen. But it's kind of hard to, as like a content creator, it's kind of hard to tell people that because they're like, well, they're a company that listens, and it's like, well, yes, but they're not going to listen to
Right.
everything. They're, you know what I mean? Like it's impossible to do that as a company.
Yeah, well, part of as a content creator, the angle that I would take in interfacing with those players is that, look, you know, a game like Ashes is very direct about what it's trying to be, right?
Exactly.
We are telling you what we're trying to build. Now, the results of building that, we may not always hit the mark, and that's where we come back and we iterate on something, right? And we take the player's
Right.
feedback. but what we're trying to do will stay consistent. And that is really a dynamic world that is fraught with danger, both player and environment, right?
Absolutely.
And that's at the crux of what Ashes is. And on the
Mhm.
dynamic world side, things that aren't going to change ever is that a lot of our systems are predicated on player activity, right?
Right.
And those predications are usually surfaced through the node system, are usually surfaced through the world spawn systems, right? And seeing a world that changes day to day is also the intent. So those are the things that really aren't going to change. The dynamicism that we predicate world activity off of, as well as the player versus X approach.
Okay. I mean, I think ultimately, like, there's just people that want to shape Ashes into what they want. And this is your game, Steven.
Sure.
You can do whatever you want. Right. So I think ultimately, like, if I'm spending millions of dollars of my own money, I'm going to make what I want. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I really appreciate the fact that you are so open and, you do allow the flexibility for certain systems to be altered, but not completely remade, and
Yeah,
changed
I mean,
completely.
to be clear, like, when you talk about I'm going to make the game I want, I agree. But however, my approach that I've taken has been one of, hey, come and make it with me,
Right.
right? And that's the reason why we do this, right?
Exactly.
So to a degree, I am inviting that level of collaboration, that level of feedback from the community. The only difference is I know who my core audience is. And it's those individuals who understand the intent, who understand the philosophy, who agree with that philosophy, right? That are going to best have their expectations managed because they know what the end goal is for PvX and for dynamic world.
Right.
It's when you have a broader audience and you have people who may not be as familiar with that intent, and they come in and they say, no, 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 change this.
Right.
Well, that's not why we're building the game. And so it just takes a little bit of diligence on the side of the content creators, on the continued diligence of the company. That interaction continues to occur where we say, no, 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 this is our goal, this is our intent, and we will continue to work towards that end.
Right. Well, this might be a very super straightforward question, but there's like 20, isn't there 22 biomes in total right now? Or is there 20? I can't remember. I
There's,
always get confused
I
with
believe,
professions and biomes. There's a lot of biomes, Steven.
biomes. I believe there are 18.
18. Okay. Will
Yep.
we test every single biome before Alpha 2 is finished as testers?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Alpha, because technically Alpha 2 will continue to run until launch.
Right.
So, yeah, so absolutely. And what we talked about was that when betas begin, they will begin concurrently alongside as the Alpha 2 servers continue, right?
Okay.
So, um, everything will be tested as part of Alpha 2 because Alpha 2 continues to run until launch.
Okay. The kind of follow up to that, because there was a lot of people that were thinking we're not going to test every facet of this game, and there was going to be maybe because people were like, oh, Steven and the team are probably going to leave some things up to, like, discovery whenever the actual launch day happens or whatever, or they might hire like a professional testing house to test certain
We we we
systems. You
we
know.
do have we have multiple professional testing houses. We have two contracted QA testing houses that we work with, one in Europe and one in Mexico. And then we have our internal QA teams that are, a dozen strong right now as well. So, there are many QA testers that we use on the project, 100%. And those are where we, obviously have more granular test reports from, where we have very specific required QA, analyses that are done and submit directly to our JIRAs as it goes back to our developers. Like,
Right.
that is a different testing apparatus than what we expect from our community.
Okay. I mean, that's honestly really, really good to hear. The thing is that one of the things that I wouldn't say worried, but when Alpha 2 starts, we're going to get 3 days to play: Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We really don't know exactly, if it's going to be like 24/7, like as soon as Thursday midnight happens, we can go in on Friday, or if there's going to be a certain time or whatever. But my question is regarding tools.
Mhm.
This is very split. I've talked to a lot of Discord people in the community about this, and I'm a fan of tools as a player, especially when I have very limited time to test. And I really want to ask the question is, will players be given tools at the start of the Alpha 2 to either level more quickly, have like a vendor with all the profession recipes, gatherables, to test what they want to test. Like if they don't want to go out and quest or do something and they're like, hey, I'm all about professions, I just want to get feedback on professions, I can stay in the town and do that. Or maybe offer something like that, like on a separate server that's more of a testing server and have a more natural play the game as
Yeah.
intended kind of server.
It is possible that we will have sessions that are hyper focused around particular systems and that we offer shortcuts of ease in order to interact with that system as intended.
Okay.
That would be done on our public test realm. We actually just stood up this last week our public test realm in addition to the Alpha 2 test realms.
Oh,
Um, and the reason for that
let's
is
go.
to do what you just described, is to test
Let's go.
specific things that we don't want to sully the data that we
Right.
collect from normal progression on the Alpha 2 realms.
Right.
So for example, over this weekend, we had a lot of the testers focused on the PTR, and that is where we know that wipe is going to occur because of that.
Awesome. 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 So I have, I got to talk about nodes, Steven, because that was the key feature that sold me to this game. Like honestly, playing World of Warcraft for almost 17 years and doing that whole mouse wheel, I'm wanting something different. And the node system just in itself provides a completely different gameplay experience. And then when you guys actually went from 103 nodes to 85 nodes and then actually increased the world, like one of
Right.
the questions I had was regarding Metropolises. Because
Mhm.
y'all actually increased the world size, has the size of the Metropolis been increased as well to account for the decrease in nodes? Or are they going to be the
No,
same?
the intended size for Metropolises hasn't changed. So
Okay.
to give you an idea,
I'm sure they're
the
still
way
huge.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, no. They're very large, but or they're intended to be very large. But
Hmm.
the the node system functions on a part of the world terrain that we essentially utilize that's a plug, right?
Hmm.
And the reason why it's a plug in the terrain is because that we change aspects of that terrain as the node advances. And so that plug has a defined size, right? And
Okay.
essentially a 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer space. So anything that's going to progress within the node proper is going to exist within that plug. Now, that's talking about city layout. There
Right.
are obviously components of a metropolis or of a city for that matter that can spawn off of the plug. Those can be small outposts, those can be little NPC havens, um, those can be hooks within narrative systems that live surrounding the node as well.
Right.
So not everything has to live on the plug per se, but that space is not going to get larger for the node proper than that 1K by 1K space.
Okay. Um, this next, okay, I'm sorry. This next question, I
What
had
happened?
so many people like whisper me, and I had these questions submitted a long time ago, but I still have people asking me the same question. And it's a very
Okay.
straightforward question. When will we get a look or at the rogue, Steven? People really want like when is the rogue showcase basically? Like what's going on with the rogue?
I will say, obviously keeping in mind that as we moved into this testing phase, a few months ago and started bringing in the A1 testers to be a part of the pre-A2 testing, um, we had plans that were essentially to continue, development towards the rogue archetype.
Mhm.
However, we had to stay agile and switch those plans over to focusing on what we are testing, as we said, test and react almost
Right.
on a daily basis now, where we're hot fixing, and that the PC team has is a part of that. So
Gotcha.
the development for the Rogue is currently have been put on hold. We still intend to have it
Mm,
be released as part of the phases that we discussed prior, which I
right.
believe the Rogue is planned for phase
Phase
two.
two. Probably not at the launch
Um,
of phase two though, correct?
yeah, it'll probably, I would imagine it's going to be shortly after the start of phase two.
Okay.
Um, but that development will continue once we are out of this kind of hot fix test and react phase.
Okay. Okay. Well, okay. Now that I've asked that question, I'll go back to my node stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, like superpowers. We haven't really got a lot of. We got like little like this is going to be a superpower for a tier 6 node here and there, but are there going to be more superpowers to choose from when it comes to Metropolises? Because I feel like having one option as a mayor, like you hit the tier 6 Metropolis, and then oh well, we're just going to get this one perk. I think it would be really cool as a mayor if we actually had multiple options for superpowers, so that way even two divine nodes or two like economy nodes can actually have completely different sets. So as a citizen,
Well,
that'd be very appealing.
yeah. I mean, the superpower is meant to be additive,
Okay.
meaning that like if multiple metropolises are stood up with a particular node type, that that the superpower, which would have been just delegated to the um the vassal structure of one metropolis, now can incorporate an entirely second vassal structure or multiple vassal structures, which influences a majority of the world, right? So to keep that in mind, that's one thing. Second part of your question, which is like, these strong, powerful interactions that a metropolis can exert over the world,
Mhm.
they're not just housed within the superpower ability, they're also housed within policies, they're also housed
Right.
within the types of building types. Like all of these are node specializations that influence the world and players interact with the world.
Right.
I'm not sure that it makes sense for us to take what you just described and put that into the superpower system. I
Okay.
think that what you just described lives within the policy and within the relationships, the node relationship systems. Like
Okay.
there is room for those places to have powers that get exerted and are chosen amongst a number of different options for the leadership team of the node that you're talking about. Um,
So that you just kind of said, I mean, you're almost making it sound like these policies actually have pretty good amount of power. Because I
oh
think there's a
yeah,
lot of people that
absolutely.
feel like it's going to be very cookie cutter. And
No, 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 no.
we haven't seen it. So it's like we only can imply what's on
Yes,
paper.
that's right.
So,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, again, we discuss what is the intent behind the policy system. The intent is that there are varying degrees of influence that are very powerful, depending on the policy that we're talking about, depending on the mandates that the mayors exert in order to utilize those policies.
No.
Um, so yeah, I mean, that is a space where I feel we can service that desire of influence over the realm.
I mean, I would say one superpower, Steven, that would actually save a lot of time for the development team and would be so freaking cool for players is to have the divine superpower to summon one of the 9 gods as like a 24-hour cooldown. How epic would that be to summon a god? Come on.
To
Come
summon a
on.
god. Can you really
Yes.
can you summon a god? I mean,
I mean,
you
you
know,
could ask. I mean, it doesn't mean they're
you
going
can
to do
ask.
it,
Yeah,
but
you can. Excuse me.
can you come and help us real quick in this castle siege?
Yeah, could you just
Uh,
send down your avatar for a moment, please? That'd be great.
Oh my god. Okay, so you guys just went over the whole starting experience, and believe me, that's something I am extremely passionate about. Is the starting experience of an MMO is pivotal to people sustaining and just keeping and playing that MMO. So, kind of a question I have for these node starting experiences is safe spaces. And I know that word could be taboo in the community, but I don't care. I'm going to say it. Will there be any kind of safeguards, at least in the initial cathedral or starting area, that people don't have to go and log in minute 1, second 1, and engage in PvP? That people can actually like set up their UIs or, get their bearings first, click a
Right.
couple of buttons. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
is there anything like that planned or even intended?
Well, again, the intention there is that we do protect players at the onset of their experience from immediately potentially having any type of griefing encounter or
Right.
PK system, whether or not that's surfaced through a level gate. Whether or not that's surfaced through areas that have PvP suppression zones, like the starting zone, I think that's still up for discussion. Um, right now, we have the ability to flag areas that are PvP available versus PvP not available. We're utilizing that obviously for the tropics and the desert biomes within the start of A2 on October 25th. You may see that in Lionhold and in the starting portal area, there is PvP suppressed there
Okay, okay,
in order
okay.
to give some level of protection. That might get moved on to a level predicated system.
Oh.
Um,
So
but
feedback, you want feedback on that if that feels good as a
yeah,
player?
absolutely.
Okay.
But as it relates to nodes and those towns, they are populated with guards. The guards are very strong. We had a bug last week where guards weren't responding actively to corrupt players.
Oh.
We are addressing that this week, so that should be fixed. But um, those guards should be able to handle any potential griefers that might be participating at the node proper level.
Okay. I mean, this is I think a very straightforward question. So I think you can answer it pretty quickly. Can there be more than one metro in a castle's ZOI? I honestly think the answer is
Yes.
no.
No, no, no. There could be more than one metro in a castle ZOI. And so, first of all, castles don't
What?
have ZOIs. Yeah, castles don't have ZOIs. Castles have economic regions. A castle does exist within a ZOI, right?
That's
However,
insane.
and let me just make sure. Let me just make sure I'm accurately answering your question.
Right.
So we have two different region systems. We have the zone of influence, which is
Right.
a static grid that lives atop the map.
Right.
Within each zone of influence, there is only one node.
Right.
So I would re-ask your question in a different way. Can there be multiple metropolises within a castle's economic region?
Right.
Because the economic region consists of multiple zones of influence and
Right.
many different nodes. And it's possible that the way nodes develop when they start advancing within the node hierarchy, that you could have a tale of two cities, twin cities, really that are kind of almost adjacent to each other, but have expanded in opposite directions. And as a result, they both become metropolises. So you could have two metropolises in very close proximity. Now, what this does
That's
is it
wild.
creates it creates an interesting game where some castles are worth more than other castles, right? And
That's
that
so
I think
cool. That's
that
awesome.
is very cool, I think.
Wow.
So because castles exert tax pressure over nodes within their economic region. And if you had two metropolises within the economic region, boy, would that castle be making a shit ton of money.
I know, right? Oh
Yeah.
my god, that's wow. I thought it was gonna be like, oh no, you're just not gonna. I know that was gonna be the end of that, but that's a really great answer. Holy crap. So going back to the starting experience, and this is another thing that I'm kind of worried about too, Stephen. And with you guys utilizing and kind of inventing this dynamic gridding system that you guys showcased a little while ago, I'm worried about starting experiences having a single point spawn. And what I mean by that is whenever you create a character, everybody that makes a Kalar or whatever, they're all going to spawn on this single point. And World of Warcraft does this. A lot of MMOs do this. Are you guys going to try to take advantage potentially of the dynamic gridding system and having potentially like a grid? So instead of everybody spawning in one singular point where they can cause like a server crash, that you could actually dynamically spread it out a bit? Or will you guys potentially want to take advantage of sharding? I know that's also a taboo word, but I think having a better starting experience is more crucial than just, oh, we're going to have it all on one server, at
Yeah.
least at the starting
Well,
level.
I would break that question down a little bit, right? Because obviously the crux of your question is how do we preserve the starting experience? Because I mean that is basically the problem statement. Hey, my
Yes,
starting experience in other MMOs is inundated with connectivity issues, with lag, with rendering issues, with not being able
absolutely.
to kill, number of spawns in my introductory quests, like, whatever that is. Um, Now we have some intended solutions that aren't yet all online.
Okay.
However, the way that we've architected our back end is in a way where we can custom define certain replication values within zones that we define. Now, one of those zones that's going to be obviously very important are the starting zones.
Hmm.
And there are four intended starting zones for the map, And in order to satisfy the way that player movement throughout the world is going to be different and unique, we don't want a cookie cutter approach so that we simulate the same node progression across all realms,
Right.
right? We want it to be something that is unique per realm. And
Right.
in order to achieve that, what we do is we bifurcate immediately the player movement. And we do that through certain narrative systems. We have multiple forward operating bases, 2 per starting location. So, for example, in the Riverlands, we have Samia's Hope, which isn't quite yet finished construction yet on, and we have Lionhold for the Kalar and the Veilun.
Right.
So immediately we're starting to funnel players in different directions, predicated on race, on narrative systems, on kill quests. Like there are a number of things that start to bifurcate the player base. Now, when we talk about performance, as I said, we have certain approaches on the back end that we can custom define how many replicated clients there are within a region. We can custom define the respawn rate of certain spawners within that region that are predicated on like number of available monsters at a given time in order to alleviate some of those issues. But I don't think dynamic gridding would come into play to solve the problem you're describing. What dynamic gridding allows us to do is as that starting area is high in population, we can dial down the governance or the authority space that a particular grid worker or server worker has
Right.
authority over so that we're distributing, we're balancing the load of that high
Mm,
population across multiple workers. And then as those populations move out through the world, that grid starts to dynamically retract.
that's
So that's the intended approach.
that is awesome. I mean, again, I think the fear for any player, right, is like you log in after you try to go into the enter world and you just did like a 3-hour queue to then have a server crash because there's like 3,000
Correct.
people in your starting area, right? I think that's the
Yeah,
main
and
fear
and
for
and, and
for
let
a
me
lot of
set
people.
expectations. It is entirely possible that that's going to happen quite often on
It
October
is going to
20th.
happen, Steven. Say it. It is going to. It's a precedent here.
So let me just say again, alpha, we are testing these things. We have our intended design. We have the way that we're trying to solve this. Now we
Right.
have to work out the kinks. We need to flesh it out. We need to address the bugs, and that's what this experience is part of doing.
Okay. Well, I want to go in and talk in a little bit about the bounty hunter system. This is a system that I also am really freaking excited about. I think the military node still needs a little bit more oomph comparatively to the other things. And I know this is something that's going to come probably in phase 3. But the bounty hunter system, has it undergone any changes or any kind of things that we don't know of? Or have y'all put the bounty system on hold as far as like iterative process or design?
Yeah, the bounty hunter system isn't fully implemented yet.
Okay.
And generally the way we approach implementation is, we have our original design, we stick with that, and then we iterate once it's fully implemented and we're able to collect feedback and testing on it. So the bounty hunter system, as it has been described, is still the intent in implementation. Part of that system is up and part of that system has been stood up, but it isn't fully fleshed out or released yet.
Okay. Um, and so my next question is kind of revolving death penalties. And this is something that I've, because on the wiki, there's like 7 things that happen to you, Stephen, when you die. It
Yes.
seems very punishing to someone like me, right?
Super punishing. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so I'm
That's another core philosophy tenet, right? Risk versus reward.
being a masochist. Is that weird?
No, 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 no. It's when you fail, you feel failure.
Oh, well,
Because a lot of
yeah.
games you fail and you don't feel shit. It's like,
Well,
oh, you failed. Okay, try
right.
again. Okay, here's your trophy.
I mean, that's true. And I kind of like again, I'm been coming around a little bit towards the death penalties because people always talk about the Zerg thing that happened in a lot of other games. But if you're constantly throwing yourself at a world boss and you have so much, like you're going to have to leave, like your whole group's going to have to
Absolutely.
go. And I think that
100%.
that causes you not to be at the world boss for 5 hours. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that also leaves other groups a chance to get that. But
Absolutely.
the question I have about death penalties is quite simple. Like, So when you die, is it a timer? Like, so when you die and you get like a little bit of XP debt or whatever, is it like a 10-minute timer that has to wear out, or is it like a permanent thing until you have to do something? Like, I'm just
So
curious
there
as to.
there are three primary consequences for dying,
Okay.
right? And obviously the way you die can influence the balance of those three consequences. First and foremost is you have a death debuff. That
Right.
lasts for, anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how often you've died.
Okay.
Okay. That death debuff is going to have some stat dampening effects. It's going to influence you negatively. The second thing that you have that happens to you is you acquire experience debt, right? And experience debt is something that lives on your progression tracker, right? This is experience debt that you need to go and gain experience in order to recover.
Okay.
Now, experience debt, the more you accumulate it, the more impact it has stat dampening on your efficacy in battle. And this is
Okay.
efficacy in battle with PvP or PvE. It doesn't matter. Now, the ceiling for that is if you accrue 100% experience debt within a level, you're going to have to work off that 100% experience debt, and you will have 20%, roughly 20% max ceiling on like how much your efficacy is curbed.
Okay.
The third thing that happens on death is that you drop your parts of your material inventory, right? Um, a percentage of your material inventory. Now, you could drop potentially completed items if you're corrupt when you die,
Okay.
right? So it depends kind of the state in which you're dying. If you are flagged when you die, if you're participating in PvP, you will suffer less consequences across the board for those three things.
Gotcha.
So it's a way to encourage players to fight back, essentially, to engage in the PvP. Now, if you don't fight back, obviously, and we're talking about flagging system. Now, if you're in an opt-in PvP event, you are experiencing much less on the experience debt, if any at all.
Right.
Um, but you are still experiencing dropped resources and the death penalty debuff. The
So
res
why do you,
super.
why do you hate PvEers?
I don't.
Like, why do you have to make it so hard for PvEers? Like, I mean, I get, but I coming from a stance of a PvEer myself. I've dabbled in PvP and other MMOs. Like,
Sure.
is it because you want the feeling of PvE to actually have like, you want it to matter?
Well,
Because
here,
again, like,
let me ask this question. In what way do you feel that PvEers are hated?
there's more things for PvPers to do than PvE.
In what way?
Well, there's like for dungeons, like there's like instance content, right? We don't know if
Okay.
those instance contents can be repeatable, right? There's not instance.
Some of those instance content are PvP as well. Some are PvE, right?
Okay.
That's the intent behind the system. There's going to be
Right.
an equitable divide because we're
Right.
PvX, right?
Right.
Um, but is it because I mean, to get to the crux of the question,
No.
when you say why do you hate PvEers, what is it about the death penalties that I talked about that you or the audience feels is specifically against PvEers?
I mean, there's a death penalty. I hope you remove this, Stephen, but there was one where.
The death penalty is equitable, right? Like
Right.
if you're going to experience PvE content and that PvE content is difficult or it's a puzzle or you use the wrong ability at the wrong time or you didn't focus the right target or you
Right.
didn't effectively heal your party, like those are mistakes that deserve a failure response, right?
Absolutely.
Now, yeah, and failure shouldn't always be fun. It's the bite of failure that makes you motivated to improve, that makes you motivated to want to achieve a thing, right?
I
Like
mean, that's
if it was easy, then why would you do it?
no, for sure. I mean, there's that death penalty where I think it decreases drop rate by mobs. I hope y'all remove that because that's trash. Like, I don't like that. Like, I don't mind the other ones, the stat dampening, the XP debt, and I think XP debt is still like, at least the people I talk to are super divided. They're like, they don't know
Right.
how that's gonna feel or that's gonna be. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the thing that I wanted to just ask, and that wasn't even a
I mean,
question. That was just something I
my
just
general, no,
wanted
no,
to
for
ask.
sure. Yeah, no, I love it. I love that conversation point because and this again, it's talking to our core audience. Who is our core audience? Because the players, the PvE players that don't want to exhibit this bite of failure, we might
Right.
not be the game for you. The same is true for the PvP players. If you can just continually respawn and go back to battle and, no problem as a result of failure, then we might not be the game for you. The idea is that when you achieve a thing, you can feel proud in the achievement because you know what not achieving that would have resulted in, and it
Absolutely.
wouldn't have been good,
Right.
right? And that is something that I think a lot of people aspire to be challenged by.
Right.
There is a certain group of people that don't give a shit about challenge, right? That
Very
just want
true.
to go,
Mm.
just just have an experience. And that's cool. There's a lot of games out there for them, but that's not our game.
Right. Well, so the whole let me ask this question real quick before I go into another one. The 20% instanced content. Because I know you kind of mentioned that it was going to be like a one-time story thing for the PvE side. I just find that to be like, why can't you create something that's more repeatable for people to go in and challenge themselves in just PvE without having to deal with PvP attached to it? Because there's people that like when you go into arena, right, and you're doing a PvP, you don't have to simultaneously do PvE while you're doing arena, right?
Sure.
Like, so
Yeah.
it's like, I think there just wants to be a bone thrown to the PvEers that want to just focus on PvE without having to,
Repeatable PvE content.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there are going to be repeatable PvE content. I think that there is. I think that there's a lot of repeatable PvE content that's in the open world, so it is subject to
Oh,
PvX.
okay.
We have events, right? Those events will recur, that people can go participate in. But again, it's still under the threat of bad actors
Right,
because one of our core designs, which you asked earlier about, what are the things that you're not going to change? Well, PvX is one of those things.
right,
And what PvX means is that when you're trying to complete PvE content or when you're trying to complete PvP content, the adverse can occur, meaning the PvE or the PvP content. Like
okay,
that is something that is calculated into the challenge rating, right? And the challenge rating is what we
right,
define as part of a particular encounter, right?
right,
And that challenge rating can be something that is PvP driven or PvE driven. If
right,
you're talking about repeatable content that is that is siloed within instances, I think there's going to be repeatable PvE content that is exclusive of PvP. That's okay.
yeah,
So there will just be PvE because we also have arena systems that are instanced, which are just focused around PvP.
exactly,
So that is in the spread there that we've talked about in the past is like an 80-20 spread.
right,
80% being open world driven, 20% being instance driven. And
right.
that's where we want to preserve certain story elements, right? That's
Yeah,
where we want to
absolutely.
define very curated number of participants, super rigid challenges that players have to solve, right?
Right.
And so I think that that is valid.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. I mean, I think, and I've talked to so many staunch PvPers, staunch PvEers, and there's always been this kind of debate where, the PvPers want the game to be more PvP based, and there's the PvEers that
Sure.
want it to be more PvE based. And I think as long as there's a balance, I think that's
Yeah.
ultimately because I'm not playing the game. I don't know, right? I'm just speaking
Yeah.
just off of what I know.
And you
So
just described what the challenge is. The challenge is literally keeping a balance
yeah,
because that is the problem of PvX is that you are trying to find the middle ground between two very disparate communities.
yeah,
However, it is here's the gamble. Here's the gamble when you
yeah,
talk about ashes of creation.
no,
The gamble is that there is actually a large community which is comfortable with those two disparate ideas existing together.
yeah.
And that's what PvX is.
Right. No, I get you. I mean, I get it. Like, I'm trying to advocate for the people that have talked to me about this. Like, ask Steven this and ask Steven that. It is what it is. But next question. So, classes. I'm a huge class guy. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the 64 class system, but I digress. Now, augment system. People, we've discussed this, and I know that's not going to go online until phase 3, but I think the word flavor has been used a lot. And people want more than flavor. And I know this game has to release soon. Like, and when you're talking about completely transformed abilities, I don't mind if that comes later, because I think we need to have like at least a base of what these abilities in the augment system needs to do. But if there's something that comes down the road with patches or expansions that you actually want to make these abilities even more transformative, I'm cool with that. But I guess for you to answer, when it comes to the augment system, is it going to be flavor when it comes to the ability change? Like, oh, this frostbolt is now like a fireball, or like it's not going to feel
No,
impactful.
I think that I think there's a wide spread of how each ability has the potential to be augmented when we implement the augmentation system.
Right.
I think that I think that even in the start of A2, without augments present, you can see the direction that some of the passives
Right.
have influence over your abilities.
Like the base talent
We've
tree, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
We've shown that the way we've constructed in a modular way our ability system, we can drastically change an ability's effects. And we will translate that over to augmentation as well and dial it up.
Gotcha.
So it's not just flavor. It is fundamentally, the potential is that some of these abilities fundamentally change.
That's awesome.
However, it's also capable that some of its flavor changes, but that's left in the hands of the player. How do they
Mm-hmm.
want to either stray away from their original archetype, or how do they want to change some of the flavor of it? Like that is the customization effort that the player gets to have some agency over.
Yeah, I mean, again, just like when I talk to people, the class system, there's just a lot of people that are worried that it's really just the 8 classes with, if you're a predator, like you still feel like a rogue. You know what I mean? And I hope that, the hope is with the augment system that it does make you
Yeah.
feel more like a
Uh,
rogue, like you can encompass that
right.
predator class.
I think it's okay for people to be fearful of that because when we talk about augments, all we can say right now is what our intent is. And our
Right.
intent is to execute on it in a way where it doesn't just feel like 8 archetypes.
Right.
So whether or not we land that intent is something people are going to have to wait and see. But know that our work is to ensure that it doesn't just feel like 8 archetypes.
Awesome. Well, the Firebrand showcase, holy shit, Steven. That was so freaking cool. Like y'all's team, bravo to the team that made Firebrand and what he's been doing. Now, looking at Firebrand from Alpha 1, there was an attunement process you had to go through to get the flame ring. And I loved like just that whole like attuning and getting that thing, because if you didn't have the ring, you just die when you go into the Firebrand area, right? Now, looking at the way the Firebrand was presented in this time, it didn't seem like there was an attunement process per se. Now,
Correct.
my question is that are attunements still on the table, or has the team kind of shifted away from the attunement process? Because I think attunements can actually be a really good thing for world bosses, personally.
Yeah, attunements are a gatekeeping mechanism, right?
Yes,
They
exactly.
they're they're a way to mitigate the potential PVX interaction that could interrupt your raid, right?
Right.
Because there is some level of effort that must be exerted by antagonists who would hope to interrupt your efforts.
Hmm.
Um, Now, that was a specific narrative mechanic in A1. Is it possible that we will see those throughout the rest of the game? Absolutely, 100%. That is a valid
Awesome.
design
Love
mechanic.
it.
Yes.
I love it. This could be a very simple question, but a lot of the RPers, including myself, I'm just curious because we know there's religion in this game, right?
Yeah.
What is the gameplay of religion? Like, how do you like? What is the actual gameplay that surrounds? Is it just quests? Is you just go and pray at a
I
church,
mean,
or
yeah,
like what?
religion is definitely it intersects twofold, right? It intersects
Right.
at the economy and it intersects at the narrative level.
Okay.
Religion is essentially it's a different flavor of social organization that
Okay.
players can join. This helps to create, again, because we're a non-faction based game. So we
Right.
have to have a lot of mechanisms that create these pseudo factions that can kind of categorize players into different groups where friction is possible, where not everybody can be a winner across those religious systems, right? When we talk about a particular patron religion of a node, or certain relics that can be acquired, or certain progression in title and rank for players that they can invest in. And that
Mm.
investment requires successful execution of certain narrative portions. And then upon doing so, now they have access to unique vendor tables that intersect with a slice of the economy that provide unique, areas where players can corner a market because they progress to a certain level within the religion. So like that's the
That's
area where religion intersects is that ability to create these pseudo factions that players can exert pressure over the economy, control over the economy, because of their due diligence on the narrative systems.
That's awesome. I'm so glad like you and your team are so MMO focused, because it feels like there's just so many companies that don't understand what gamers want. You know what I mean? And it's so refreshing to hear like just how passionate you are, and just like I can't wait. Like I'm so excited. So there's a heated debate going on in the forums. I don't know if you looked at it, about how fast should leveling be in Ashes of Creation. Now there's been on the wiki, from what I looked, like anywhere between like from 4 to 6 hours. It was going to take like 70 days or something like that. Has that philosophy changed? Is the leveling process, because I don't know if you've played classic WoW, but classic WoW I thought had a very good earnable leveling experience, and that's without XP debt or any kind of failure mechanisms, truly. What is the team's stance on how fast leveling should be?
Well, I mean, as you would expect, we have a diverse set of opinions within the studio about it as well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
My my current uh, approach in balancing leveling through 1 through 25 is a roughly 100 hours of gameplay, is what it takes to get to level 25. Now,
Wow.
that is not a linear curve, right?
Right, right.
This is something obviously where we want to get players
Feedback on.
quickly to,
Oh,
let's say, level 10 or level 15 or whatever, right?
right,
And then it starts to slow down.
right,
Um, you know, my idea there might be a bit more on the grindy side. This is obviously subjective,
right.
but I think it ties in again to that risk versus reward philosophy,
Right.
right? It we're spreading out also things that can contribute to leveling. It's not
Yeah.
all just through grinding, right? There's quests, there's artisanship, there's gathering, there's PvP. Like those things all contribute to gaining progression experience. And there's a lot of different dials along the progression path that people have the ability to interact with, whether it be their weapon level progression, or their adventuring class progression, or their artisanship level progression. There's areas where players are going to be distributing that focus. So yeah, I think it's something that we'll collect feedback on from the community as well.
Oh my God. That makes me really, really excited. I'm just glad it's not going to be an 8 hour, oh, you're max level. And I think that's what people are
Right.
used to in today's day and age. It's shit, in my opinion. I think
Well,
my
yeah.
wife, being a brand new MMO player, like we were leveling so quick in WoW, and she just couldn't understand her abilities. She was getting all these abilities on her bar, and she's like, I'm just pushing the same number one because that's what I know, because we're leveling so fast. Like having the slowed down effect really makes it feel earned. You know what I mean? And I think if you have that quality gameplay with it, it's just going to be special. Like, and I think that
Yeah.
leveling should feel like a journey again, you know?
Agreed. Yeah, I agree 100%.
So, I have, let me see, probably one more question. And I'm really excited at how you're going to answer this. And you've answered this question before, but I really wanted to kind of hammer this home because I think it's really important to the overall design and the kind of sanctity of Ashes. Most other gaming companies, when it comes to breaking TOS, just literally suspend players for buying third-party gold. When it comes to bodying the game knowingly or doing something stupid, can you confirm to players that Intrepid is going to take this heavy-handed approach and just permaban people that are knowingly doing shady crap?
Yeah. Well, I think this goes back to, you know, part of why I started Intrepid. Um,
Yeah,
however, however, the reason that part of the reason why I started Intrepid was by scummy monetization practices on the other side of that.
absolutely.
But in part also it was because the games that I played in, you almost had to break the rules
Right.
to stay competitive with everyone else because everyone was breaking the rules,
Exactly.
right? All of the top players were allowed to break the rules. There was no enforcement, either because the company didn't want to,
Invest or
mitigate their revenue, or, whatever reason that existed.
no.
Um, it created a really toxic atmosphere of who can outdo the other side in essentially breaking the rules.
Yeah.
Now, in that scenario, I would always win, of course. But wouldn't it
Ah,
be
shit.
nice if there was some integrity in the player performance that
Yeah.
was embraced by the company and executed on by the company?
Yeah. Exactly.
And that is part of our mission statement, which is, hey, what matters most in any MMO, whether you're a risk versus reward MMO, whether you're an everybody gets a trophy MMO, regardless of whatever the deal
Yeah.
is that you protect the integrity of the player activity. And the player activity is what should be driving the in-game market, is what should be driving the in-game economy. Like, these things are paramount in making sure that players feel comfortable logging in each day and exerting effort to achieve whatever they're achieving.
Yeah.
So that is a central focus that, we will be taking forward with us when we talk about how to enforce our rules. And
Right.
I think that even now we utilize that even during testing. Let's just say there have been some players which have been disinvited to
Yeah.
the testing.
I think you're not going to get rid of sellers. My thing is you got to scare the shit out of buyers. If you scare the shit out of buyers, you starve the sellers.
Yeah.
And I think buyers for the longest
Well,
time felt no, like you said, just there was no fear because the company's not going to do it. And if they do suspend me, it's for 3 days, 10 days. It's not
I
too big of a deal.
I
So they keep doing
I
it.
do think, first of all, agreed. But second is, I think that there are ways that we have thought of, that even other companies can, if they're willing to invest the resources, which a lot of times, unfortunately, they're not,
Exactly.
that you can stop sellers as well. And sometimes even
Even better.
easier than the buyers. So, because you got to remember, those sellers are all about efficiency, and
Uh,
efficiency can be a trap,
yeah.
right? And it's a very easily learned trap that, with the appropriate behavior heat mapping, um, you can pick up on relatively quickly.
Yeah. Whew. Well, honestly, like, do you mind just chatting for a couple minutes? Like, I asked all my
Sure. Yeah.
questions. I just
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
like, what do you do, Steven, like to like mellow out? Like, whenever you're done with your day, ashes, get away from me. I just want to chill. Like, what are you doing? Are you watching anime? Are you, playing some D&D? Like, what are you doing just to chill, relax?
That is a good question. I will say that that perhaps I have not been super good at chilling over the course of the last
Oh,
few
come on.
months.
You got to rest, Steven. You got some R&R in you, man.
I will, yeah. Well, there is a time to rest and a time to fight. Right now, it's fight mode.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
for sure.
what I will say is, what are the things I enjoy doing? I mean, I like to game when I can. Obviously, right now I
Mhm.
play a little bit of Dota. That's a place where
Oh.
I can let the rage flow. Right, I'm all composed and happy and nice and
Oh,
civil at
damn.
work. And then if I go and play a MOBA, I'm like, let it flow forth.
Oh my god.
It's
I
too
mean,
good.
I kind of like pray for you and your team because being in crunch is not, I have a buddy of mine who's in, gaming as well, and crunch is not a fun thing. You know what I mean? And
No,
I always
yeah,
I know, like, when I heard you talk about that, and I told my chat, I said, guys, they're probably in crunch. They've probably been
yeah,
in crunch. And and this is just going off of like knowledge from like what my friend was telling me, is like, yeah, they have to be like, there's no way they're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And just hearing the disappointment in your voice and stuff like that, it really kind of made
Yeah.
me, because I know you probably didn't like doing it, but I mean, things
No, of course
like
not.
have to be done, in that sense. And you guys are so close. We're literally, what is it, less than like 14 days away, 13 days away from
That's right.
Alpha 2 launch. I mean, what's been the scariest part about making an MMORPG for you?
What's been the scariest part? Ooh, that's a good question. Um, Honestly, you know what? The funny thing is I think the scariest part is also the most rewarding part. They're like
Okay.
one and the same. I think that the transparent development approach is both the scariest and rewarding thing.
I can only imagine. Even in my
Uh,
chat, just to be transparent with how I feel about the game is like
I,
risk and
I
reward
know.
there.
There's a level of understanding that comes with following development of a project this size,
Yeah.
that not everybody gets. And
Hmm.
some people may get it at some times and then they forget about it at other times, right? And that can always be scary because you rely on voices in the community to help spread understanding about what the team is really going through. And I will say that
Oh yeah,
the team is going through some shit right now, right? We are
absolutely.
on the daily addressing issues. We are, working very long hours, and we're doing it because we want to succeed at the development of this project for the fans, for the people who want to play the game.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be sad to see certain commentary. Uh, Personally, myself, whenever I see negative commentary, it motivates me more. But that's I think unique. I don't think most people respond that way.
Well, I mean, we're human,
So
right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it sucks whenever you're making something you're very passionate about and people don't like it, right?
yeah,
It's as a content creator for YouTube, right? If I make a video, I put a lot of time in, and then I just get a bunch of dislikes and negative comment. It makes me feel
right,
like shit. I'm like, oh god, I thought I actually did good, And I can
absolutely.
only imagine like coming from that, especially with so much, right? Because I feel like the genre right now for MMOs is just, it's bad, Steven. Like I'm
I
sure
know, I
because
know, I
you're
know.
doing you're doing like I saw this TikTok of Throne Liberty, and there's a bunch of bots in Throne Liberty. It's a free to play game, and it's just I fear that for Ashes, because it's like the barrier of entry is so low. It's $15 a month. That's it. No box cost, no
Right,
anything. And I fear that I'm gonna log in and see that in Ashes and be like, oh hell no, and just like
I
report.
know.
And I can't imagine what it's like from your perspective to, I was talking with Adam before we were going live,
Yeah,
um and also just seeing like where your idea of Ashes was probably back in 2015, 2016,
right,
and like how reflecting on that now, like, and you actually seeing your game like in
right.
front of you, is that a surreal experience for you?
Oh, every day is surreal for sure. Absolutely. And what you talked about with regards to the MMO market, it is sad, but from my perspective, that's opportunity. That's the opportunity statement,
Oh,
right? That is
absolutely.
that is
Absolutely.
that is it is a shitty situation for my fellow fans that love to play these games to see the state of the market in the way it is. And I think we all agree and know, what that state is. But I see that as the opportunity statement. But yeah, it is definitely it is a surreal experience to log in to Ashes today
Hmm.
and look back 3 years ago and see what
Right.
Ashes was, right? Or 4 years ago, or
Yeah.
before, the UE5 move. Like there's been a lot of history in the development of this project,
No.
back from when we were a team of a dozen people, to today over 200. So
It's
I
wild.
and the funny thing is I will say, like, the stages have been drastically different experiences internally, not just with
Yeah.
regards to the product, but like, what my day to day
No.
is a drastically different experience a year ago and the year before that and the year before that, each of them being unique, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
100%.
have you hired an assistant? Like, I know that position, it looks like it's been filled.
I
Do you,
I honestly I consider the entire production team my assistants.
Oh no, Steven. You need someone helping you, dude. Get like an AI bot or something to like a scheduler or
No, I
something,
look.
dude.
I know. I
Jeez.
moved away from that approach when it got too late, and yeah, that is something.
Well,
That is a different topic.
well, I would love to continue talking with you. I really, unless you want to keep talking, I mean, I can, but I don't want to keep you. I know you're a very busy man.
Yeah, no. I'm good. We can take another 5 minutes or so if you want to chat about some other stuff,
Oh, okay. You want to talk some aliens?
dude. Aliens. Oh my gosh.
So my dad,
Did you see there's a new Congress there's a new congressional hearing that's scheduled in November?
no, I
Yep.
saw the interview of the head of the Air Force admitting to alien UFOs. Like that's not anything that we know of the United
Look,
States, any other
I
country.
don't know if it's aliens, extra dimensional beings, some future tech that we have access to, or whatever it is. But when people of the caliber that come as eyewitnesses and people who've been a part of the government and they under sworn testimony are giving evidence that they believe is representative of the weird shit that's happening, like that's a second head look,
Oh,
right? That is where you're like, okay, this guy's been like undersecretary of defense for 20 years, or this dude's like a top gun, pilot who knows the most advanced like equipment that's capable, and they're talking about this eyewitness testimony, and you look at that and you're like, well, something's happening there. I don't know what it is,
yeah.
but there's something there that's interesting. I'm just glad that there's some more things happening next month where they're bringing in some more whistleblowers, quote unquote
Oh
whistleblowers.
yeah. So my dad, he saw a UFO multiple times, and so when I was growing up, like my dad, he made me watch Fire in the Sky when I was like 9 years old. Okay, have you seen Fire in the Sky, Steven? The alien movie?
I think I saw that when I was much younger. Yeah,
Oh my god, that
I
movie
don't even want
was
to go to that. That's
strong.
creepy. Like
That
again,
traumatized the hell out of me.
the whole UFO topic. I think you start to get into crazy land when you try to derive some explanation for it yet.
Right.
Like I'm
Yeah.
not anywhere near that stage. I'm like I don't try to draw a conclusion. I just say there's something that's inexplicable or that we can't explain with certainty. We should be investing in having people help explain what is happening. And it
Yeah.
should be open. It should be transparent,
Yeah.
right?
No, absolutely.
And if it is some military secret, then there should be congressional oversight, right? Not these people that are getting stonewalled from explanation.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, so like my dad, one of his really good friends is a Southwest airline pilot. And the stories that he's told my dad and alien crafts, like even back in the 80s, in the 90s, coming from the water, being, it's wild. And so like
Yeah.
me and my dad, we grown up and we've been very much like into the whole conspiracy stuff, aliens and everything like that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and I
It's
am not
wild.
I'm not at all a conspiracy theory dude. Like not
Oh,
at
I
all. Like
am.
generally
I am.
I'm usually pretty vanilla when it comes to like,
Right.
the simplest explanation is the most likely. Um
Yeah.
but this stuff is kind of weird, and the caliber of people that are reporting on it
Oh yeah.
are enough to make me say there's something there.
Oh, I know. Like I said, like the head of the Air Force, like I mean, he was a decorated, general or something like that, and he was going out just saying some pretty
Oh yeah.
outlandish stuff. You know what I mean? And even
Yeah.
he was hesitant on saying it. Like he was taking deep breaths. It's like you just see his body language and stuff like that. It's wild. Steven,
Absolutely.
again, I could not be more thankful and more privileged to have you on the show. Thank you for making episode 100 as special as it is, and thank you
Love
for
it.
making MMOs great again. I really
Thank
appreciate it.
you, brother. Love it. Thank you for all you do. Love your podcast. I think you do a great job with it. I love the guests that you have. Thank you for following us, and thanks for your support. And for everyone in the audience, thank you guys.
Thank you, guys. Like I said, you guys can follow me here at Vlhadus Gaming here on Twitch. You can also follow me, of course, on YouTube at Vlhadus Gaming, and of course, you can follow Intrepid Studios at Ashes of Creation everywhere. Go Go sign up. Use my link to sign up for the game. Alpha 2, you guys just started to do a new contest, the Gleam contest, where people can probably win access to Alpha 2 access, correct?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we launched that today. So guys, thank y'all so much for all the support, all the likes, all the subs, everything. I couldn't be more thankful for you guys. You guys have a great one. We will see you guys on the next one. Take care, guys.
Bye, guys.